Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me today in the Locker Room for an author's afternoon. I'm Alan Locher. Today, I'm going to introduce you to three writers with three very different stories and books to share. So let's get started. Inspired by her popular blog, Melissa Braverman has just released her new book, Notes from a Single Gal in the City, Reflections on Dating and Mating. The book offers insights about today's dating culture, as well as advice geared towards singles 30 plus for navigating it. Hailed by fans of her SingleGalNYC blog as New York's real life Carrie Bradshaw, Melissa has been through it all. From online dating disasters and the trials of texting to cheeky old flames, her stories will strike a chord with anyone juggling modern mores and a desire to meet that someone special. With an optimistic tone, Notes from a Single Gal in the City illustrates how the journey to finding love is as important as the destination. Melissa is also a big daytime television fan and had an internship at Soap Opera Weekly back in the 90s. She and I reconnected after my recent interview with A. Martinez. I had recognized her name and realized that we had worked together in our previous jobs about 7 years ago. I love small world moments like this, and so happy I could have her here today as my guest to talk about her new book. Please welcome to the Locker Room, Melissa Braverman. Hey, Melissa.
Hello. Hey, Alan. It's so great to be here with you. And agreed. I love the small world connections.
So fun. And really, I told you I loved the book.
Thank you.
Really such an interesting take on dating and relationships and the modern world, really.
Yeah, it's
So
quite a journey.
yeah, it really is. Tell me first about your blog, Single Gal NYC,
Sure.
which I know you're no longer doing, but what prompted you to start that?
Well, a good friend of mine, this is going back now 13 years ago when blogging was kind of still new to the internet. And I would come into work and she would hear my crazy stories about dating. And she kept saying, "When are you going to start a blog? When are you going to start a blog?" And I kept kind of pushing her off. But as someone that's kept a diary since the age of 7, I thought, well, this is kind of a natural extension of that. And I was a big fan, like a lot of other women, of Sex in the City. So I thought Single Gal in the City has a nice ring to it. And so I started and I did it for 6 years. The first couple of years I blogged every single day. And
Wow.
it
That
was
is commitment.
yeah, well, the like I said, keeping a diary is kind of good practice for that. I'm on volume 106 right now. But the response
That
was
blows my mind. And I know you mentioned that in the book. Uh, it just escaped me. When did you realize the blog was resonating with women?
Well, I was kind of obsessively checking the visitor stats, once I kind of put that little code on my blog. But people wrote in, women and some men alike. And I kind of like to say being single today is something everyone can empathize with, especially when you live in a big city, because it's not a walk in the park as nice as Central Park is. And I got even recently when I was posting about the book, I heard from a CNN producer, and she said, when she first moved to New York, however many years ago, she found my blog and it made her feel less alone. And she thanked me for that. And I got a lot of messages like that in the course of doing it. So I think when you're going through being single in a big city, we're kind of all in the trenches together. And it felt really good to know that, my misadventures could, help comfort those that were going through the same thing.
It's great. I mean, seriously, I think that's so great. And I know from just doing the Locker Room, getting messages like that when you are just, helping somebody get through something.
Yeah. No,
It's a nice feeling.
it's a wonderful feeling. I remember a male reader reaching out to me, and he was going through a divorce when he found my blog. And eventually he remarried. He met someone online, and he sent me a lovely note thanking me, saying he learned a lot about, dating today, because he hadn't been obviously dating in a long time because he was married. And those are the kind of things that really do make an impact on you.
Hmm. I remember what my question was earlier because you said you started journaling at 7.
Yeah.
Was there someone or something that prompted you to start?
I don't think it was anything in particular. And if you go back to those early entries, they're not very exciting. They're mostly about high scores on Donkey Kong and what I had for lunch. So yeah, it's
Fantastic.
not too riveting at the age of 7 or 8, but I just always was, I think, a storyteller and a communicator. I think when I was in middle school and the teachers did most likely to, mine was most likely to have my own talk show with Michael Jackson as my first guest. And this was in 5th grade.
Oh,
So,
wow. Oh, Michael
but
just had a birthday.
just had a
didn't he?
birthday. Yes. Happy birthday,
Yeah.
Michael. So for me, writing has just always kind of been a core part of my soul. And even though I've done a lot of different things in my career, that's the one common thread that's been there through everything.
I love that. What do you think writing that blog taught you that you didn't already know about being single in New York City?
Oh, so much. I would say, kind of like I mentioned before, that as alone as you might think you are, you're not, because there are a lot of other people going through the same thing. And kind of, what you said at the beginning, that being single isn't just about getting to a certain destination. It's really about the journey to get there. And I think, like a lot of single people, I spent so much time questioning and wondering, am I on the right track? Why am I still single? Is there something wrong with me? And everyone has their own trajectory. And I think sometimes you get to a certain age and you think, well, how come my trajectory doesn't look like that person's? Because you're not that person. So if I could go back and tell my single self anything, it would be, don't worry, you're where you're supposed to be, because it's hard to always believe that.
That's great. What prompted you to turn the blog into this, Notes from a Single Gal in the City?
A lot of people had asked if it was eventually going to become a book. And I think ultimately, when you're a writer, that's always kind of the pie in the sky fantasy, is to write a book. And then the pandemic happened. And like a lot of people, I was laid off and I had time on my hands. And what finally got me to do it is my best friend, who has never written anything in her life, and she works in healthcare. She decided to bang out a screenplay. And in 1 month, she wrote a whole screenplay, having never written, anything in her life, a really good screenplay, I might add. And I just thought, well, how can I call myself a writer if I don't have something to show for this pandemic? So I'm not into baking bread.
She challenged you. She certainly challenged.
She threw down the gauntlet, because
she did.
In 30 days, like with her, she still had her job at night. She would bang it out. And when she sent it to me, I just thought, okay, that's it. I can't dawdle anymore. I don't have any excuses. So
what was the first thing you did when you decided to write it? Like, how did you tackle that?
I pulled basically all the blog entries. And so a lot of the book, is kind of based on that. And I had actually been working on and off on a larger memoir for pretty much the last 10 years. And I had set that aside. And I thought, well, I'd like to kind of do something kind of fun and frothy. This is a challenging time, and we all need content that distracts us. And I kind of felt, well, the heavy duty memoir, this isn't quite the time for that, but something that's a little more uplifting and fun. And so that was part of the mindset too, to give people a distraction from everything else.
Besides sharing so much of your own story, you share a lot of stories from friends.
Yeah.
Were most open to sharing?
They were, actually. When I had the blog, if I was writing about someone that I dated more than once, I would let them know. And I would also make it, very anonymous, like you wouldn't be able to know who the person was. But again, most people, once you're into your 30s and you're single, I definitely found that people wanted to share their stories. I always kind of joked that, it was the great equalizer in New York, where, kind of not seeming friendly is just the default setting. But as soon as someone says, oh, I'm single too, it's like the floodgates open and everyone wants to share. Have you been through this? Okay, good. It's not just me. So if anything, I found people very open.
So interesting. And we all can learn, no matter what the topic is, by
Yep,
sharing those stories. We all can learn from them. Um,
absolutely.
some of the funniest stories are in the Lost Art of Seduction chapter. Can you share your favorite, your favorite?
Well, one of my favorites, and would have to be one that actually took place outside of New York when I was living in Australia briefly. A beautiful part of the world, great people. All the things you hear about Australia are true. Very charming, down to earth, fun people that know how to balance work and not make it the focal point of everything.
Mm.
So I was out one evening with friends who had a very good looking rugby player friend visiting from the West Coast. And we hit it off. We had a lovely evening, a little smooching at the bar. And then we went back to our mutual friend's place and they went upstairs. And I was sitting on the couch and it was a little chilly. So I pulled the blanket on me and this guy disappears to go to the bathroom. He comes back and he slides in next to me completely naked. And I started laughing because I really didn't know what else to do. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Come on, you're an American woman on holiday." And I just thought, oh boy. So if I say yes to this, I'm basically confirming your low opinion of American women.
American women, yeah.
So I just said sorry. And he couldn't believe it. And I just couldn't stop laughing because I thought, I mean, talk about no seduction. You leave, you come back from the bathroom completely naked. That's not going to work.
In someone else's house.
In someone else's house.
I mean,
they
let's not forget that.
You know?
Yeah, let's not forget that.
I mean,
I also like Frank, the AA guy. Woo!
Oh my goodness. Anger management issues is a pretty common affliction when you meet people online. And yeah, Frank. So we had
and that's actually I mean, that's interesting because I think anger issues are more prominent today because of everything that's just happened
Absolutely.
in the last couple of years. But that was a few years ago, so it's interesting.
Oh
right?
yeah. I mean, I think we were talking about this earlier. New York is a tough city and it's very easy to have a short fuse. But the interesting thing with online dating is a lot of times people will suggest things and then not remember that they've suggested them. So this particular guy was the one who had suggested we go for a drink. And then we played email tag for a while. And then a month later, he finally got back to me and he said, "Oh, by the way, if we're going to meet up, let's not go for a drink. I've been sober in AA for 10 years. And, AA could use a woman like you. I don't need drinks to meet someone." And I wrote him back. I said, "You were the one that suggested drinks. And I would have been happy to do a non-alcoholic beverage like coffee, but you didn't give me the chance." So.
Crazy. Talk about Pete, who you met in Ireland. You were doing research for your blog. What kind of research were you doing there?
So about 2 years into doing my blog, I had kind of gotten to a point where I knew I was ready to leave my job. I wanted to travel a little. And I had come to a point, I was in my mid-30s, where this question kind of kept looming in my mind. Would I still be single if I lived somewhere else? So I decided to do a little exploration and I did 2 months, 8 cities in the US, 6 countries, 6 cities in Europe to kind of answer the question, what's it like to be single in other big cities? And Irish Pete saw what I was doing because it was mentioned in one of the local papers in Dublin. And we went out for this really beautiful, lovely evening. He was a perfect gentleman. And even my fiance is like a huge fan of Irish Pete. And we're still we're still Facebook friends. And he's married now. He's coming to New York in April. And my fiance is like, "We need to go out with Irish Pete. I want to take a picture with Irish Pete," because he was just one of those people that restores your faith in humankind. And I was at a very low point in my single trajectory, as was he. And we just had a lovely evening. Nothing happened. He kissed me on the cheek, but it could not have been a more effortless, lovely evening. And when I posted about it on the blog, he sent me a really sweet email afterwards we've remained friendly and in touch. And when I went Facebook official with my fiance, his was one of the first messages that came to me. And he said, "I know of no one who deserves it more. I'm so happy for you." So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And congratulations. I was going to get to the fiance. You brought
Thank
it
you.
up first. So we'll get to that shortly. But do you use real names?
In the book, it depends. I kind of like to say the innocent, the not so innocent are protected with pseudonyms, but the people that, come off well, like friends that have shared stories, I use real names because it's pretty much just first names. As I said, you'd have to really do some digging to see who exactly I'm talking about, but all the kind of dastardly figures from the past have pseudonyms. Yeah.
It's crazy. You also in the book share some of your online dating disasters. Any favorites?
Oh gosh, a lot of not so favorite characters. This story actually isn't in this book, but in the next one, this was one of the worst. I've always been of the mindset if someone wants to suggest something adventurous or creative, I'll go along because I know that, it's not always easy to do that. So I had this one guy who wanted to go bike riding, and I assumed that we were going to rent bikes together. Well, when I showed up, he had a tandem bike. So keep in mind, this is a complete stranger, and now I'm getting on the back of a bike looking at his rear end. And so we get on the bike, we're going 10 minutes, 15 minutes go by, and I lean over and I said, so where are we going? Oh, we're going to Brooklyn. So it was like a 45-minute bike ride from the city. And I hadn't been bike riding in a while at that point. So my rear end was pretty sore by the end of it. And to make matters worse, could not stop talking. One of those that really treated a date more like a monologue than a give and take. And then he insisted on bike riding back over the Brooklyn Bridge, taking me to the subway station. And I've never been so exhausted or sore after a first date. So lesson learned. Find out if someone's going to take you on a tandem bike or side by side
before you go.
Before you go.
Yeah, seriously. You also in the book talk about a number of run-ins with your exes.
Oh yes. Yes.
Any favorites for that?
Well, I would say the theme of my love life has been what one of my favorite breakup books called The Curse of the Unlearned Lesson. And so exes of mine, kind of like bad pennies, just kept resurfacing. And the first guy who really broke my heart, guy from London when I did my junior year there. And he was one of the reasons I didn't join Facebook. P.S. He ended up being one of the first people to friend me. We hadn't seen or spoken in over a decade. And then He sends me a message asking if he can crash on my sofa because he's coming to New York in 2 days and his company won't pay for a hotel. And I remember thinking, of all the people on planet Earth to ask, he reached out to me, and he had really done a number on me back in our college days. So yeah, I've had some unusual requests from old flames. Another one wanted
you've had some, the book, there's just great, whether they're yours or the friends that share, there are some really just interesting stories and interesting characters. Let's say that. I love what you said in the book about whether he is Mr. Right. Mm-hmm. Would you mind sharing that with the viewers?
I think one of the traps that I got into for a while was, is this person Mr. Right, or is he just Mr. Right for now? And it kind of robbed me of the joy of the moment and just kind of experiencing what you're meant to experience with someone. And there's value in it, whether it's 3 months, 3 years. I mean, I can honestly say that I learned as much from people I dated for a few months as I did, for more of a longer period. So I think it's just important to be present and not 10 steps ahead and kind of trying to read. If someone had told me I was going to meet my fiance on an 80s themed cruise, in my mid 40s, especially because even today, despite the fact that 41 million American women are single, you're made to feel like an anomaly once you reach 35 and you're kind of, going beyond your childbearing years. And I remember I adopted a dog 4 years ago, my wonderful little Benji. And I thought I'm going to live out my life with my dog and my work, period, the end. Cause I was like, I am done. That ship has sailed. And then,
that's when you least expect it is the best thing.
It is.
It really is. And I love also what you just said about, all our relationships help us grow. Yeah. Whether it's somebody you're in a relationship, I think I wouldn't be happily married today if it wasn't for all those other relationships. Like you learn so much along the way. Before I let you go, I said it at the start. You had one of your first gigs was a soap opera weekly gig.
Soap Opera Weekly, yes.
And for all daytime fans watching today, there's a nice tribute in the book to Santa Barbara and Cruisin' Eden. So everyone needs to pick the book up and check that out. Melissa, thank you so much. And congratulations. I love that you just put this book out and you're working on another one, right?
Yes. So the next one, which will be Tales of a Former Bachelorette, kind of really digs into, the entire journey to finding love at 45. And, I just want to say that there's no age limit for finding love, contrary to what popular culture and media might tell us. And the best thing to do is just be your authentic self and be happy in your life. And everything does take care of itself.
And just be open to it.
Yep.
Thank you so much for joining me, Melissa.
Thank
I wish
you,
Alan. Continued success with the book. Notes from a Single Gal in the City, Reflections on Dating and Mating is available now where all books are sold. Have a great afternoon.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
You're so welcome. Bye.
Bye.
All right. My next guest, Dr. Ziva Bakman-Flamhaft. How can I marry this man? She asked herself one day as she walked down a street in Tel Aviv. Her wedding was 4 weeks away, and her fiancé Yigal had just pointed out a woman he had slept with. She knew then and there that her marriage would not be easy, but she was still so in love with Yigal, so she went ahead with the ceremony. 3 years later, the unthinkable happened, and her husband passed away from injuries incurred during the brutal Six-Day War. It was such a physical shock to see his horrific burns and to watch him die that Flamhaft miscarried their unborn child. Somehow, she found the strength to carry on after the dual traumas of losing her husband and baby simultaneously. Her self-published book, War Widow, is an inspiring story of resilience and self-empowerment. War Widow movingly demonstrates how it is possible to move forward in the face of tragedy and help others along the way in the process. Please welcome to the locker room, Dr. Ziva Bakman-Flamhaft. Hi there.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. Please tell everybody what prompted you to write War Widow, and most importantly, prompted you to write a memoir where you share such intimate details of your life.
Well, so there's a backstory to everything. My book actually, first it was a chapter in a book that was never published about women in the Middle East, Israeli women and Palestinian women who suffered the consequences of conflict. So I turned into a book, and I knew I had a story to tell, an important story. And
that's an understatement, doctor. That is an understatement.
Thank you. And once I decided to write, then there was no borders, no limits. I would write about everything, issues that are, there are a lot of Me Too there, right? There are issues with my mother, mental health, that people don't talk about. So I decided to sort of go all the way and write about everything.
You figured if you're going to do it, you're going to do it all the way.
If I'm doing it, if I'll do it, I'm doing it all the way. Exactly.
Yeah. So what was your childhood like growing up in Tel Aviv, Israel?
Well, when I was a child, it was not long after Israel became independent. So there was a lot of innocence. Before that, of course, I vividly remember wartime in a shelter. Then there was nation building. And so there was fear, and there was innocence, and there was happiness, like, a happy childhood, wonderful summers. And then in the backdrop, there was also my mother, who suffered mental illness or severe depressions in wintertime, not in summertime, in wintertime. So I would say it's a mixture of all those things. All in all, it was, I would say, a good childhood with a lot of trauma, I must say.
Yeah. I'm going to get back to your mom in a second, but I know with writing and you being, you know, a teacher now, was there a book that had a big impact on you as a child?
Well, yes. Well, all of the. I have to talk about my father for a minute, because he was an avid reader and a printer, and he used to, every book that came out, age appropriate, he would bring home for me and made me read. So I hated it because I had to read all the time. And most of the books then for young adults were all translated, mostly American books. So among the books that I read, you know, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, and of course Little Women, and Rebecca, and others. But one book named Desiree, about the wife of Napoleon Bonaparte, impressed me so. I was 12 or 13, because Desiree was defiant of Napoleon, you know, Bonaparte. Who is defiant of that guy? So that impressed me a lot, I remember.
That's great for a young woman to get, you know, show that strength in a female character.
That's right.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. So your mother's illness, I didn't realize. So I love that you talk about it, because you're right. Mental illness is not talked about enough. I never realized somebody's depression could be seasonal.
Yes, and today it probably would be recognized as such. It has a name, SAD. I forgot what SAD, what it stands for. And I know it's treated with certain lights. You know, you look at the light, but yes, there was apparently, that was not apparently, it exists. And I remember vividly how, when fall came, how scared I was about the approaching winter, because winter meant that mom is sick and mom stays in bed and cries, and she's not the same woman that she is in summer.
It's seasonal affective disorder.
Oh, okay. And it has to do
SAD.
with light. Right, SAD, and it has to do with light. So today probably would be treated different. It would be treated differently. She used to, as I mentioned in the book, I didn't know what, there was no, people didn't talk about psychiatrist, or there was a nerve doctor and a nerve disease. And I knew that she was getting electric shock, so I didn't know what it was. So she was treated with electric shock, with many medications, and she was addicted to those medications for the rest of her life.
Do you remember what you thought as a child watching that? Do you know, and how it affected you at that time?
Well, it affects everybody. That's why mental illness should be talked more about, like any other illness, I think. It affects everybody, but interestingly enough, we never, between my sister and my father, we never talked about it. We never ever discussed that. So I remember being scared. In the book, there is a very vivid scene about one of her attacks, and shocking. So I vividly remember that particular incident. I was scared, but I was also a parental child, so I took care of her too. I used to stay home with her, and there are a number of scenes in the book of what it meant to, you know, to live with a mentally ill mother. Yeah. In the summer, she was wonderful. She was thriving in summers.
So in the book, you also talk about your first husband's infidelity and your rape, which again, that, you know, being so honest about these stories. Do you believe in forgiveness?
Depends what kind of forgiveness. So in the book, I was talking about my husband's infidelity, my fiance's infidelity, a month before, 4 weeks before the wedding, and he. During our 3 years of marriage, he appeared very loving and very, very devoted. But the trust, and he never gained the trust.
Hmm.
So forgiveness, yes. Trust, that was an issue. The rape, I never forgave. You cannot forgive that. And
I can understand that.
in the book, I'm talking that it took me decades to talk about it publicly, and that I started to 40 years later or less, I started to check if I could still press charges. But then he died of a dreadful disease. So it ended there. But no, I did not forgive that. It was awful. It was brutal. And if in the book I write that it happened about the same time, that 3 years after I was widowed, and the time when I started to think about rebuilding my life. And that set me back. It was a terrible experience.
I mean, you had a lot of trauma. I mean, your first husband died in 1967 in the 6-Day War. For those watching, can you? I know we don't have a lot of time, but can you share what the 6-Day War was?
Well, so the war started, actually, I have to go back to 1964, when Israel and its neighbor Syria were fighting over water resources. Nasser was the father of Arab nationalism, or the self-declared, and also the loved leader by all the Arab states. Syria, I have to be short with that, but you can imagine.
Right.
Syria, nobody wanted that war. Syria started to blame Nasser for not being the true Arab leader, because he's not attacking Israel. So Nasser was caught he was too busy with the war in Algeria, was too busy with the war in Yemen, but he was caught in that war skirmishes between Israel and Syria. And in June 1967, he took steps that are considered today aggression, threatened to destroy Israel, not only verbally, but also the number of steps that he took. So I'm not going to go into them, but a war became inevitable. And once Israel realized that the war was inevitable, Israel preempted and destroyed in the first day of the war the Egyptian and Assyrian air forces. And they won a war against 3 countries in 6 days. And the war is still, militarily, the war is still studied in military school.
Wow.
So that's a very short version of
right. Well, thank you. And sadly, your husband was burned beyond recognition in that war, and you.
He wasn't. Yeah, I'm sorry. He wasn't supposed. He volunteered. He finished what he had to do in the Sinai Desert in the south of the war area, and volunteered to go north. He wasn't even supposed to be there. So yeah, so he was killed literally in the last hours. Was injured in the last hours of the war, and died 36 hours later.
And you saw him 15 minutes before he passed away.
Saw him, and I always wish that the military didn't manage to bring me to the hospital, 15 minutes before, because the sight never leaves you.
Right. How is it, possible to put into words how difficult that period of time was for you?
Not really, but I can tell you that first of all, I wasn't. I went to the hospital. I was a month in the hospital trying to save the pregnancy. So I was not really aware of what's going on in the world. Just I was concentrating on trying to save the baby, but I couldn't. And then I moved. I wasn't going home because my loving family, didn't let me go home alone, and I stayed with my sister and her family. And I went back to work about 2 months later. I was surrounded by family. I was surrounded by people, and nobody let me really concentrate on my enormous tragedy. And then something happens, and my sister, an incident happened. I was dreaming that I was in the sleep, that I was getting closer to my husband, and then I hit my head on a wall, and that was so traumatic in itself. And I told the story to my sister the next day, and she didn't know how to react. She was laughing, and I decided that, not maliciously, she was, how do you react to that? So I decided, okay, it's time to go home. And 3 months after I was widowed, I went home, and then became the difficulty, the thought, oh,
having to deal with everything.
The door is going to be open and he's going to walk in. I had awful nightmares, because repeated nightmares, because what I saw, what I had seen. It wasn't easy, but I was surrounded by a loving family, and I had friends, and then I became an activist.
Yeah, I was going to say that in 1968, as a young childless war widow, you tried to mobilize other widows to demand the continuation of pension rights that the government was planning to eliminate. Right? Is that
right? So I was very busy with that. But life went on with difficulty, and
But that job and that activism led to a job with the Israeli Defense Ministry, and your move.
Well, my activism, at a certain point, I was so immersed in bereavement that, and there were I had a stop. There was an article about me in the paper and the pictures, and I had a stalker, and there are all kind of things that happened in my life, and I decided I need to get away, just to breathe to breathe a different air. And I didn't have money, so I went to the same people in the defense ministry whom I was fighting, and I knew that they had purchasing flights, what's called cargo flights. So I asked whether I said, I want to go away. Can I join a cargo flight? I don't care where I'm going. So the question was, well, how long do you want to go for? I said, I don't know, 3 weeks, just go and come back. So the man said, 3 weeks? Why not 2 years? We'll get you a job. And I said, sure, you want to get rid of me, right? And he said, that's not such a bad idea. Because I threatened, I said, I'm going to go all the way to the Supreme Court. And so within a week, and I didn't pay attention, Israeli bureaucracy is well known. So I said, okay, but I didn't take it seriously. Within a week, I had a job, I had a flight ticket, an airline ticket, everything that I needed, except I didn't tell anybody about it. I was working. My parents didn't know about it. So I needed a month to just prepare everybody that I was leaving. And I was supposed to be came to New York, supposed to be here for 2 years, met my American husband, and to my married almost 50 years, and stayed and thrived.
Wow.
And, first I went to, I studied painting, art. I thought I would become an artist, but then I was drawn to political science. So, and if you told me then that one day I'll stand in front of a class of 50 students and do my PhD and teach, I would laugh, because I was shy, or at least I considered myself as a very shy, timid child.
Well, one of those students, Marcos Papadopoulos, sends his love.
You have regards. Yes.
Sends his love to you. He sends his love to you.
And I send love to him. I spotted him. He took a lot of courses with me. I spotted him in the first course. Very talented guy.
Yes, he's a good man. Speaking of your American husband, what was it like? Was it difficult to write about this book while you were married and talk about your past so intensely?
Well, I'm lucky to be married to a man who can contain, my past life, because from experience, not everybody could do that. Not only some men think that they're competing with another man, but there's something about a war hero, the glorification. So you're competing. If you think you're competing, not everybody thinks they're competing, but there's this hero that you have to, live with for the rest of your life with that woman. Not everybody could do that, but he can, and contain that. And me too. People ask me, how could you write the book? How could you married and you could write the book so in such intimate details? So I told him about that. He knew about the stuff, but not as the knowledge not was as deep as in the book. And I didn't let him read the book until it was completely, absolutely done.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And, and people ask me also, it's not just the husband. How do I live with that? I built a wonderful life, but my past never vanished. I mean, it's alive. So I embrace, it's part of me. I live side by side with that past, and build the future and the present. So you embrace it and you contain it and you own it, and that's how you survive.
And the childhood book that you referenced about Napoleon's wife, really, this book, War Widow, shows your resilience and your self-empowerment. So now, it makes sense that book had a large impact on you, because you have a successful marriage, a successful career, after going through some really traumatic events. And
Yeah.
Bravo to you to be a survivor, because that's what you are. And
Thank you. Yes.
thank you so much for sharing your story. And
thank
everyone, please check out the book. Go to the website. It's available where all books are sold. War Widow is available now. Thanks, Doctor. I really appreciate you spending time with me.
And thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. Have a great afternoon.
You too. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Okay, everybody. My next guest and the last author today is Ben Levin, who is an autistic young adult with an incredible passion for writing. His first young adult novel, In the Hole, has just been published. He is a true inspiration to all around him. He says that autism is not a curse, it is a gift. I'm truly excited that he's here today to share his gift with all of you. Please welcome to the Locher Room, Ben Levin. Hi, Ben.
Hi. I heard what you said when introducing me, and thank you so much. It means a lot that
you're very welcome.
Praise.
You're very welcome. So, from one Jersey boy to another, I really appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you having me.
I just read your interview you did in Authority magazine, and you shared the story of your birth. Would you mind sharing it with the people watching today?
Okay. I was born in a walk-in closet.
So how did that happen?
The details, even though they've been told me, but I'm a parent, a little fuzzy in my head right now.
Okay.
But,
well, I thought that was...
I was born early, too.
Yeah, you're right. You were born early. How old were you when you were diagnosed with autism?
It was shortly before I turned 5.
Okay. Do you remember that?
No.
Okay. I know that you've been in love with stories since you were a little kid. Can you talk about some of the books that had a large impact on you? Can you remember some of the books you loved as a kid?
That I loved as a kid, or which inspired my writing?
Either or, whichever.
Okay.
You tell me.
Hmm. When I was a kid, I loved being read to. My
Okay.
dad bought all these Winnie the Pooh picture books to me when I was really little, and I loved having him read them to me at night and looking at the pictures.
Who doesn't love Winnie the Pooh, right?
Yeah.
And you started writing when you were really young too. Do you remember what your first story was that you wrote?
It was called Gabriel Garnet. It was
And what was
supposed
Go
to
ahead.
be it was inspired by Harry Potter, except it was focused mostly around Judaism.
Oh,
That's
interesting.
I had this habit, or I'm not completely sure habit's the right word, but that's not important. When I was young, where when I read a story, I loved rewriting it, but simply changing names, themes, etc. Peter Rabbit was a classic story I loved rewriting as a kid. And then what I do, and I didn't call them stories. They were just I just liked rewriting the story, but I didn't see it as a book or any of them at all. That changed when I was 10, and mom kept referring to Gabriel Garnet as a book by mistake, and I thought maybe I should turn it into a book. So I did, and excuse me, it was
That's a
shortly before fourth grade, and by the end of fourth grade, I knew writing was what I wanted to do with my life.
that's incredible. Incredible. And you published two books on your own, self-published two books. Nellie's
It's
Friends.
actually,
How many?
w- I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were counting all of the Nellie's friends as a whole.
Nellie's yes, I was counting Nellie's Friends as a whole and Ollie and the Race, correct?
Yes, though I've also done another book, Ghost Wars, even though that book wasn't traditionally edited.
Okay. And I mean, you wrote those when you were in 8th grade. How did it feel to put those out into the world?
I'm going to clarify a few things.
Okay.
That I wrote Ghost Wars in 8th grade. Nellie's Friends I wrote in a mix between grades 5, 6, 7, and 8. And Ollie and
Wow.
the Race I wrote in 5th grade.
But I mean, not many kids can put out books at that age. How did it feel to put those out into the world?
It was exciting. It was a dream come true.
I bet. I bet. Did some of your friends react to those books? What's the reaction been to those books?
All of them?
Just what do what you remember, some of the reactions that you got from people who read those stories.
Hmm. My friends who have read Ghost Wars, most of them haven't read any of my other books, if any of them have read any of my other books. And they enjoyed reading them. I loved asking about favorite characters, and some of my friends asked me if I was gonna write a sequel to Ghost Wars, and I decided to. I don't know for sure that I'll publish the sequel, Brain Wars, but Brain Wars was every bit as fun to write.
Wow. You've got a lot of stories to tell, and in the whole is your breakout novel that was just published. Can you tell me where the idea for this story came from?
I was in religious school at 8th grade, and my rabbi showed me in my class a video about homeless children in Florida. It was a really heart feeling video, and seeing their story made me want to help advocate for the homeless and help fight the crisis. And I thought maybe my writing was how I could contribute to the cause. And I then pictured my main character, David Kimball, and I wrote down and I decided to write down his story.
Can you tell us a little about the story?
Yeah. David is in 3rd grade when his dad loses his restaurant, and a few months later, his family loses their home. Over the next few years, David and his parents and sister go through every challenge imaginable, including his dad becoming an alcohol addict, David being bullied, and his sister fainting and getting into a coma out of hunger.
Wow. Wow.
But the family sticks together and never loses their belief in one another or their hope.
That's terrific. Well, what did you learn about homelessness as you were putting the story together?
One thing which is really important to make sure everyone understands is homelessness can happen to anyone, even children. Homeless
That's a
people actually aren't even their own separate people. They are just like everyone else. David is a huge example of this. He loves sports, he plays video games, he has a good group of friends, he's close with his family, he has an interest in writing, he's sensitive. He's just like any other kid you know.
That's great. Well, I love that you offer homeless resources on your website, which is, such a smart idea, to offer those resources for anyone who is watching who needs them.
That idea actually came from one of my editors, Catherine Hall. So,
Okay.
Catherine, if you're watching this, since you just stopped working for us, shout out to you and thank you for all of the work you've done over the past 6 months. I love you. Mwah.
That's so great. That's so great. Have you started school just yet?
I started today.
Oh, wow. What are some of your favorite subjects in school?
This won't surprise you, but English and creative writing.
Oh, that's great that your school offers creative writing at such a, that's great. That's great. As I said in the intro, you say that autism is not a curse, but a gift.
That's correct.
Can you elaborate on that to people watching?
What do you mean?
What do you mean that it's a gift? Can you share what you mean by that?
I feel like everyone focuses too much on the problems with autism, such as our behavioral issues and how it makes autism seem like a negative and something which so many of us want to get rid of within ourselves. That absolutely has to change. I am not denying that autism is challenging because it is, but autism is a blessing in many ways too. It helps me be able to tune out and write. And actually, mother says every autistic person has a superpower, and mine is my writing. For me,
I love that.
everyone on the spectrum, just like everyone else, has something they're good at. We need to start focusing more on autistic greatness and how and the great things people with autism have done. Like Greta Thunberg, who helped the world about climate change, and Jason McElwain, who was the manager of his basketball team in high school in 2006, and they let him play for senior night, and he made headlines when he ended up scoring 20 goals in 5 minutes. If he can do that, and I can write a 200-page novel at the age of 18, tell me, what can't autistic people do? It's really important that people get that and stop seeing our condition as a problem.
Well said, Ben. Well said. And having a superpower to write like you are able to is incredible. So bravo,
Thank
and
you.
really bravo for articulating that so well. I love that you shared that. I love that you say it's a gift. It is a gift, and you should continue to share your gift with the
Thank
world. What advice would you give to someone listening today who may be struggling with some of those limitations?
That's a good question. I'd say don't give up and know that look for your superpower. And again, I understand that autism is a challenge, but in the same way, it is a blessing, and just don't give up. I'm sorry I don't have anything better to say.
That is a great answer. You don't have to apologize at all. Do you have another book in mind for what's next for Ben Levin?
I have a few stories in mind. Are you asking to write or to publish?
Just what's next on your writing agenda?
Currently, I'm working on a musical about a mythical world and a series about a reading and writing club. And I'm excited to develop both of them more. I'm also working on a biography of the Wright brothers.
Oh, wow. All of that sounds incredible. The musical sounds incredible. Do you like musicals?
A little.
Yeah, go ahead.
Never mind.
What were you going to say?
I'd rather not say it.
Okay. I was going to say, do you have one you like? It's okay.
I
You don't
love
have to...
Mamma Mia.
Ah, who doesn't like ABBA music, right?
And I also love, I'm not completely sure it counts as a musical, but The Sound of Music is wonderful.
It's a music. I think it's a movie musical. It's a movie musical. Would you like to write a screenplay sometime?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you maybe you can turn In the Hole into a screenplay as well.
Maybe.
I mean, homelessness is an important topic, and
yes, it is.
Bravo to you to put it out into the world at your age. I really commend you for doing so. And making your audience aware that they're just like you and me, except they are homeless, and we have to help the homeless.
Exactly.
Well,
perfectly said, Dave.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Ben.
It's a pleasure to meet you too.
Thank you so much for doing this today. Good luck in school this semester.
Thank you.
And good luck with continued success with your writing.
Thank you so much. You're really is
welcome.
An honor to be here. And because I am kind of new at this, and I know I've stuttered a few times, I do want to acknowledge that I'm new to this.
Don't worry about that at all. I would say you're probably one of my youngest guests, and you did beautifully. So
Thank you.
keep doing it. You got to practice makes perfect, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Have a great afternoon, Ben.
Bye. Also,
Bye.
thank you
Yeah.
for having me, Alan. I'm sorry I called you Dave.
That is okay. Don't worry about it.
Mhm.
Don't worry about it at all. You stay well, Ben, and
You too.
come back when you have another book to talk about, okay?
Okay, Alan. Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out Melissa's book, Dr. Bakman-Flamhaft's book, War Widow, and Ben's new books are available where all books are sold. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so yet. Turn on the notifications for reminders of all upcoming shows. I'll see you all tomorrow when Les Brandt, Lisa Brenner, and Kevin McClatchy from Another World join me live right here in the Locker Room. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Bye-bye.